Alcaraz explodes over Australia's favour towards Sinner. The whole truth about what happened today in Australia: was Sinner favoured so he could win? Intense controversy at the Australian Open, with criticism of what happened with Sinner when his match was stopped while he was losing. This is what the rules say. Everyone is talking about what happened today in the Australian Open match between Jannik Sinner and Elliot Spitziri. Everything was stopped when the Italian was losing 1-3 in the third set, as the tournament applied the heat rule. After play resumed, Jannik turned everything around, and some are talking about favoritism and actions taken to benefit the winner of the last two editions there. Was this really the case? Let's set the scene. A day of intense heat. The thermometer was close to 40 degrees Celsius, and the players were suffering on court because of it. Sinner, who has already had moments like this in the past, lost the first set to Spitziri and, although he took the second, started the third set losing, going down 1-3. Jannik began to show signs of fatigue. He suffered from cramps, could barely walk, and told his box that he couldn't go on. The shadow of retirement, as happened in Shanghai, loomed over the two-time champion of the tournament. His team encouraged him to continue, knowing that there would be a break to rest at the end of the set. It was then that the organization stopped the match, with Sinner trailing 1-3. Some wondered what was going on. From that point on, there was a long break of 10 minutes, the roof was closed and the air conditioning turned on. That allowed the Italian to recover his energy and eventually complete the comeback. Spitziri completely fell out of the match, and victory went to Sinner, who spoke of luck in turning around a match that had been completely against him. What the Australian Open 2026 heat rules say: it is understandable that some people think there was favoritism towards Sinner, because it is not normal to stop a match when a player is down 1-3. Not during a break nor at the end of a set. But to understand what happened here, you have to take a look at what the heat rules of this Australian Open 2026 say. The organization has established rules stating that men's and women's matches will be stopped if level 5 is reached on its scale. The Australians have set up a scale from level 1 to level 5, measuring 4 parameters: air temperature, radiant heat, humidity, wind speed. If level 5 is reached, matches must be stopped whenever an even number of games has been played, or, in the case of a tiebreak, at the end of that tiebreak. For that reason, Sinner's match was stopped at 1-3, when the fourth game was reached, an even number. For the same reason, play on other courts was stopped a bit later, because they had to reach an even number of games. This scale is visible to everyone present at the tournament. Journalists covering the event published a photo of the screen showing the scale at the moment it reached level 5. It was almost 2:30 in the afternoon, right in the middle of the match between Sinner and Spitziri. The Australian Open applied the rules correctly. The tournament applied exactly what its heat rule states. Nothing more. Some may think there was favoritism, but nothing was done outside the rules. You can talk about luck, because it is true that Jannik was lucky that the break came at such a crucial moment for him, but just as it benefited him, it could just as easily have gone the other way. He could have been ahead, with his opponent exhausted, and still had the match stopped. When asked about the pause in the match between Sinner and Spitziri, the player from Murcia was clear. I only trained for 35 to 40 minutes and I could already feel the heat. I can't even imagine playing a match at that temperature. I saw his match, obviously. These are situations where you have to push through. When you're dealing with the heat or things external to the game, everything becomes much more complicated, he began. Jannik showed what a champion he is and how good he is, coming out so unscathed, so to speak. Physical issues are always there, and I'm sure he'll recover as well as possible, and maybe it could affect him toward the end of the week, concluded the Mercian, who could face the Italian in a hypothetical final, as has happened in the last 3 Grand Slams. McEnroe lashes out against the heat protocol and the favoritism towards Sinner. The decision by the Australian Open to stop the match between Jannik Sinner and Elliot Spitziri due to the heat protocol, when the American was leading 3-1 in the third set and the Italian could barely move because of cramps, is still being talked about. And John McEnroe, who always says what he thinks, sees a certain favoritism towards Sinner in that decision. I don't think anyone wants to see this in our sport. It seems like there is favoritism. I'd like to think that if it had happened to Spitziri, they would have stopped the match as well. I don't know if they would have, he said during ESPN's live broadcast. Alcaraz awakens the beast in Melbourne and is already looking toward the quarterfinals. I'll have to adapt my tennis. Carlos shone in the round of 16 with his best version so far at the Australian Open, combining a devastating serve and a lethal forehand to beat Tommy Paul in straight sets. What a match Carlos Alcaraz played against Tommy Paul, showing that he already has his sights set on advancing through the rounds to reach the final and his long-awaited Australian Open trophy. The match ended 7-6, 6-4, and 7-5, in which the American's abilities were completely neutralized by the great play of the Mercian. Now he is already pointing to next Tuesday, a marked day on the calendar, when he will face either Bublik or de Minaur for a place in the semi-finals. Alcaraz will not have it easy on Tuesday. Heat is a good companion on a paradise beach, but not during a tennis match. Just look back one day and see how Sinner almost retired due to a collapse caused by more than 40 degrees of temperature in Melbourne. You have to adapt to it. I can't control things I can't control. On Tuesday it will be very hot and, surely, the roof will be closed, Carlos Alcaraz said in the post-match press conference. I'll have to adapt my tennis to playing with the roof closed, and I won't have any choice but to accept it. I hope it doesn't affect my game too much. I'll try not to think about it. That will be my mindset for the match. I don't know if it will change later, but that's how I'll try to approach it, he concluded, aware that it will not be an easy match even though he does not yet know his opponent. Djokovic's famous serve. He also answered questions about that technique inspired by Novak Djokovic's serve, a skill that has taken him time to control. It's not the fastest serve of all, but it's super precise. It's very difficult to read. Really difficult. He places it very close to the lines, and the ball slides a lot when it hits the lines. It's very hard to return. That's what makes his serve so good, even if it's not the fastest. Sometimes it's better to have more precision than speed. There was also another moment when play was fortuitously stopped in the middle of a tiebreak, a situation he had unfortunately already experienced in other matches, possibly also caused by Australia's high temperatures at this time of year. I've been in that situation before. The first thing is the health of the person who felt unwell. When we saw that they were feeling better, I tried to stay active again because in a tiebreak every point is important. I played good points after the restart, and it wasn't hard for me to refocus. The terrible inferno Alcaraz will face in the Australian Open quarterfinals. The world number one will play his quarterfinal match next Tuesday against de Minaur. The conditions for that match are expected to be very difficult. Even so, Carlos already assumes that it is something he has to accept. Carlos Alcaraz continues his run at the Australian Open in a solid and confident manner. The world number one defeated Tommy Paul in the round of 16 in straight sets, with a score of 7-6, 6-4, and 7-5. Carlitos once again showed the excellent physical shape with which he has started the year. In the quarterfinals, Alex de Minaur awaits him. The Australian will undoubtedly have the support of his home crowd in a tournament where he is finding one of his best versions. De Minaur defeated Bublik in 3 comfortable sets, beating what seemed to be one of the revelations of the tournament. 6-4, 6-1, and 6-1 was the final score of a match that could serve as a warning for Alcaraz ahead of next Tuesday. However, de Minaur may be just one more concern on court for the Mercian, considering the conditions in which the quarterfinal match will be played. Weather forecasts point to extreme heat, with temperatures that could reach 45 degrees Celsius in the sun. A real madness that will very likely activate the roof protocol. Alcaraz is already aware of the hell he could face. Even so, the Mercian wants to focus on what he can control. I'll have to adapt to it. I have to focus on the things I can control. On Tuesday it will be very hot and, surely, the roof will be closed. I'll have to adapt my tennis to playing with the roof closed, and I won't have any choice but to accept it. I hope it doesn't affect my game too much. I'll try not to think about it. That will be my mindset for the match. I don't know if it will change later, but that's how I'll try to approach it, Carlitos concluded at the press conference. In this way, now under the guidance of Samu Lopez, Alcaraz will reach the quarterfinals in Australia for the 3rd consecutive edition, a stage he has never surpassed after falling to Zverev in 2024 and Djokovic in 2025. This time, however, he will face a rival he has completely dominated, Alex de Minaur, whom he has beaten in all 5 of their previous meetings. Moreover, on the horizon of a possible semi-final, his opponent would come from the Zverev-Tien match, after the young 20-year-old American overwhelmed Daniil Medvedev, a finalist in the tournament in 2021, 2022, and 2024, with a more than surprising scoreline, 6-5, 6-0, and 6-3, becoming the first player to hand the Muscovite a bagel in a Grand Slam.